All right, welcome back for another episode of the Walk-On Redshirts. I have William back with me again, and we had the full first weekend of college football. A lot of action this weekend. William might still be a little bit recovering, but if you take away Monday night, William, what was the highlight of the weekend for you? Everything, football and everything in there for you.
Not to rub it into the people who didn't have access, but one of the highlights was not having Spectrum on Thursday when Florida and Utah kicked off. Maybe that's too soon, but man, there's a lot of pissed off college football fans out there, and ESPN should know better. They should know, or Spectrum should know better. Man, pay them what they want. You're going to lose a lot of customers. But
I can't imagine being ready to tune in for the Florida Utah game and then basically being told, nope, figure it out yourself.
yeah,
You don't get to watch on this platform.
no, yeah, there's a lot of mad people, and there's a lot of people jumping in their cars to head to the bars. So, yeah, no, but other than that, I mean, there was some great football, great matchups. I mean, we had some ranked matchups, some border rivals, some border battles with North Carolina and South Carolina. We had some disappointments for sure. We had some teams turn some heads. It was a great week one. I know we had week zero last week, but that was just that was a little taste. This was Christmas Day, and it delivered in my opinion.
I don't want to dig into this too much, but kind of one thing off the cuff for me was the Big 12 was a little bit disappointing this past weekend. You see Baylor go down to Texas State. You see Texas Tech go on the road and lose at Wyoming. Not a great first week. BYU only beat Sam Houston State by 14. You take out the Oklahoma game. You take out a couple of these other matchups where it was just domination. The Big 12 didn't look great.
No, they really didn't. They struggled against people. I mean, Texas Tech was one of the main ones that came in with a lot of hype this year. I mean, I knew I was on the train. People were talking about how good the defense was supposed to be, and man, you lose to Wyoming in overtime. I mean, that's not a good look. That's just not a good look.
Houston surprised though. They beat UTSA. I know a lot of people thought UTSA, including myself, were going to be a potential contender for that New Year's Six Bowl. But TCU, a lot of people thought that they were going to run over Colorado, and they didn't. And kind of leading into this, that was the biggest headline to me of this past weekend. Deion shows up. He doesn't flop. Like, they came out with a bang. Dropping 45 points on the reigning national runner-up. I know it's a very different team, but TCU is not a Colorado School of the Mines. It is not even Colorado State. Like, this is a legit team, and they come out and drop 45 points on them.
No, and if I had one word to describe Colorado's offense and one word to describe Colorado's defense, the offense was explosive and the defense was opportunistic. And because Colorado's defense did not play well, and I don't know if that was more of TCU's offense just being that good, or if Colorado's defense is just a work in progress. But they were really struggling, and the tackling side, they could not finish tackles. But the offense, man, they just scored at will. The freshman running back, whose name is now slipping my mind,
Dylan Edwards.
Dylan Edwards was phenomenal, phenomenal. I mean, he was so explosive. I mean, the little guy, they couldn't tackle him. I mean, and he was scoring through the air. He was scoring on the ground. I mean, I was very, very impressed with that running back.
True freshman scores 4 touchdowns in his first game.
Yeah,
5 receptions, 135 yards, 6 carries, 24 yards. Also was the kick returner, I believe.
Yes.
So
he did a great job of that too.
Colorado, like, I didn't believe this. I thought Sanders would be good. I didn't think he was going to be this level. I didn't think he'd throw for 500 yards in his first game. I thought TCU had enough returning on defense that they would be able to slow down Sanders. But I'll tell you what, the other surprise is Travis Hunter. I know he's a 5-star player. I know he was like the number 1 player in the country. But he came out, had 11 catches, 119 yards, had an interception, almost had a second one too.
Yeah, it would have been a great catch. And to go back to Shedeur Sanders, I mean, granted, like I will pat myself on the back for a second. I did think that Colorado was a bowl team this year, but I didn't think Shedeur Sanders was anything close to what he played like on Saturday. I mean, I was one of the doubters who was like, well, he did pretty good against at Jackson State, but who's he playing? And he's got Travis Hunter. I mean, he's throwing to dudes, and he's still not even producing that well. But man, did he show up on the big stage?
Yes,
He's definitely related to
absolutely.
his dad. He's definitely related to his dad. You can't deny that.
No, he showed up and he played very well. You know, there's a lot of hype going in for Buffalo, or for the Buffaloes. Going into week 2, they played Nebraska. They get to host Nebraska. There's a lot of rumors that Nebraska is going to end up taking over the stadium. It's going to be a lot of red this week, and I think because of the timing of it, Nebraska fans are very loyal, and I can see it happening. So I'll be very interested to see how they fare in the home game for Deion, and how do they handle this new hype. They came in with a lot of question marks. There were some people that were trying to make it seem bigger, but now they're probably walking around the campus like superstars.
Yeah. Now, the people who are crowning them as national champs and playoff contenders, take a step back. Let's be careful. Let's wait a couple weeks. But the people who are saying that was a fluke, I don't think that's true either. But Nebraska, I mean, they played in a classic Big Ten matchup with 23 total points scored, going toe to toe. And yeah, Nebraska does show up, but those fans are insane. The fact that they've gone through such a long time of just underperforming and still sell out every single game and show up to all these away games. Hats off to Nebraska fans. Those are probably some of the best fans in the world.
Nebraska had almost 100,000 people show up for a women's volleyball match.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. They are. There's nothing to do but pick corn and go to Nebraska Cornhusker events. So I guess you're going to be loyal and there's nothing else to do in the town.
Yeah, I'm looking at their schedule, and their schedule is not easy moving forward because they play almost every tough team in the Pac-12, with the exception of Washington. They travel to Oregon, they travel to Utah, but they do get USC and Oregon State at home. Arizona is an interesting one. Washington State, we're going to learn about this weekend. UCLA is on the road. The only 2 real gimme games in conference I see are Arizona State and Stanford. Other than that, I truly don't know, because I don't know what we're going to see out of this. Also, like, how long does Travis Hunter play both ways? Can he have that longevity of playing, 30, 40 snaps on both sides of the ball?
No, I mean, and this one was upwards of 70 snaps on both sides of the ball. But I think this was more of the moment where, hey, we're trying to prove ourselves. We're trying to let people know that we're on the map. Travis, you need to just go out there and put the team on your back. I mean, because the game was going back and forth. You need your best players on the field, and I think, the coaches were aware of that, and Travis Hunter showed up and showed out. I mean, he did exactly what he needs to do, but that's not going to happen all year. I mean, in games that they start to get a couple scores ahead, I don't think you see him on defense. I think you see him more on offense, or vice versa. Uh, with a weapon like that, you don't want to overdo it and then lose him for the year. So, but the fact that he played 130 snaps on Saturday is one of the craziest things out of that game. That is, the fact that he wasn't puking every time he went to the sideline was insane, and was able to just to be interviewed after the game like that. Is hats off to that kid. I mean, I was very, very impressed.
Yeah, I think they're going to have him on a snap count the rest of the year on different specific games. A game like USC, they might let him loose, but like a game like this weekend, like Nebraska, they might not. Colorado State, they might not. They might look at some of these matchups and strategically try to use him, on offense. I still think he's a natural corner. I don't think he is the explosive wide receiver. I think he's a good wide receiver. I think he's a great college wide receiver, but I think his true ability is at cornerback at the next level. And I could see them, in a game like USC, unless they are really dying for points, which they might be, because USC, or a game like Oregon, they're going to basically say full go on defense, then pitch count them on offense.
Yeah, and honestly, like, he's a good wide receiver because he's the best athlete on the field, and that's just
Yes.
the fact. I mean, it's not like he runs crisp routes. It's not like he's well defined as a receiver. He just gets open because he's the best athlete on the field. But yeah, you're right. He is a true cornerback, and he showed that against TCU. I mean, they only picked on him a couple of times, and he made sure they went away from him. And shout out those fans who were calling him overrated before the game. Don't poke the bear.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the other huge matchup this weekend was Sunday night Florida State against LSU. LSU put up a real good fight. They were leading at halftime, and then all of a sudden, the second half, Florida State like flipped a switch or something because they just started playing lights out. What was your big takeaway from this game?
Well, my biggest thing was they had 6 penalties going into halftime. 6 penalties for a total of 58 yards. Florida State did. They were playing very undisciplined, and because of that, LSU sticks around, and LSU was able to make a play here and there. I mean, their defense, Florida State's defense, had a couple of big missed assignments that led to the open wheel route. But when it came to nut cutting time, they didn't budge. I mean, LSU got down to the goal line. They had 6 plays on the one and didn't get it. I mean, Florida State showed up and they really impressed. Now, one of the things that they're going to have to fix is the drops. Johnny Wilson Jr. had a terrible game. He played great. If you look at his statistics, he had a great game, but he had some key drops. And if you're going back and forth with a team that's keeping up with you, you can't be dropping those passes on third down. I mean, Jordan Travis was running for his life and getting the ball to him, and Johnny Wilson was just dropping him like he's a brick mason. So they got to shore that up. I mean, Jaheim Bell had a couple drops. They were struggling. Now, I was most impressed with Keon Coleman. I mean, he hasn't played with Florida State. This is his first year playing with Florida State, and he had, was it 3 touchdowns?
Yeah, nine catches, 122 yards, 3 touchdowns.
You'd think they were both seniors that had played with each other for 4 years. I mean, they had such good chemistry, and
they were dialed in.
Yes, they were. I mean, my favorite Keon Coleman catch, I think it was his second touchdown catch, was in the back on a fade route, and just the guy was playing him almost perfectly. Just caught the ball. Didn't matter. Ball didn't budge. He's got sticky hands. He was the most impressive receiver and probably player of the night for me. I wasn't too impressed with Trey Benson. I wasn't too impressed with Jordan Travis. I mean, Jordan Travis, he was playing as expected, but some of the other guys, disappointed.
As expected, while he throws for 342 yards and 4 touchdowns.
But I kind of expected that for him. Well, no, you know what? No. Let me call myself out. I did not expect that from him. I called him out in a previous episode and said he didn't show up in big time games. He did. So let me take a step back and say, Jordan Travis, you did impress. You are impressive. So you're right, Jake. Thank you for calling me out.
The running attack, they kind of rotated a bunch of guys. Trey Benson, Rodney Hill. They were rotating guys. Jordan Travis had 7 carries. I think that's going to be a theme for this year. I think Benson will end up with a lot of the carries. But the one thing I mentioned this on the First and Goal podcast when I was on with them is that Florida State's future schedule is light. They don't have a very difficult schedule. They play at Clemson at the end of September, but other than that, Clemson and Duke are the only 2 ranked teams on their schedule, and will probably be the only 2 ranked teams unless Miami or a team like Pitt surprises. But they go Southern Miss, Boston College in the next 2 weeks. Those should be blowouts. Their last 4 games of the season are at Pitt versus Miami, versus North Alabama, which I didn't even know it was a school, and then at Florida. You never know with Florida, but we saw last weekend that they were terrible. Yeah. So honestly, with what they have on offense, I really do believe that they have the best skill position for sure in the ACC. They have the best platform of all offensive skill positions in the ACC, and I don't really think it's that close either.
No, and they set themselves apart extremely far on the receivers. I think Clemson has the best running backs in the ACC, but the wideouts at Florida State are just, they have a plethora. It's not fair. And they all made big time plays in that game. They all showed up, and hats off to that team. Hats off to the offense. I mean, but they're pretty high on themselves. They're confident, and they showed for good reason against an LSU team. I mean, they had Brian Kelly calling his team out to the press, which I don't really agree with how he did it. But I don't know if you saw Jake after the game. He said, "I think our team didn't know who they were. They thought they were the 2-time national champion Georgia Bulldogs, that they could just show up and win." And LSU's got a lot of improving to do. I think we saw a lot of flaws in LSU's team, especially at the wide receiver position. They were very lacking. Jaden Daniels was some of the decisions he made. I'm like, dude, like running, trying to hurdle running through the teeth of the defense. I mean, he's lucky he didn't die when he got freaking just yards to the ground.
I'm surprised his rib cage is intact after that one hit.
Yeah. He was getting now. Hats off to him. He's tough, but good Lord, you're not gonna be able to take those hits all year round.
Yeah, and for me, one of the disappointments was the wide receivers. Brian Thomas had a good game, but I really was expecting more out of Malik Neighbors, and then just there wasn't ever seemed like there was somebody else who was stepping up. Like the rushing attack, Jaden Daniels tends to be that guy, but none of the other running backs really stepped up to help them. No. The running backs were averaging, the three running backs had 12 carries for 49 yards, and 35 of that came on one carry.
Yeah, and I will say to Neighbors' defense, I think he got a little in his head when he muffed the punt. I think because I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken, he was the one who muffed a couple punts last year in the LSU game, the LSU Florida State game. So I think that was in his head. I think that might have played a huge role in his wide receiver output.
Yeah, so I'll let you have the floor for this last one, because this last one we can't avoid not talking about it. Monday night, Duke hosts Clemson. Duke wins the game 28-7. The floor is yours, my friend.
So you never want to react out of emotion. So Monday night, I'd sworn off college football. I was never going to watch it again. It wasn't enjoyable for me. And then I wake up the next day, and I start to think about it. The second half, I thought Clemson's offense looked pretty good. I mean, they were moving down the field at will. Their biggest enemy was the 5-yard line. They just couldn't get past it. And there was some sort of barrier that just knocked the ball out as soon as they'd get there. I mean, and not to knock against Duke. Duke didn't make mistakes when the time came. We had Clemson had 7 turnovers, 2 turnover on downs, 2 blocked field goals, 2 fumbles, and an interception. You're not beating anybody that way, and you're definitely not beating anybody when there's 4 clear opportunities for touchdowns and for points, and you turn the ball over. You're not going to beat anybody that way. However, now that I've had a couple of days to let that really sink in, I don't think it's as bad as it seems. That's not going to happen again. That is a fluke of a game. Again, Duke is a good football team. Hats off to them. They executed. They did what they were supposed to do. They didn't turn the ball. They turned the ball over twice. Once on a bonehead play on the muff punt, and then went on a fumble to go to end the half. But Duke played good, fundamentally sound football. They didn't give up big plays. They made Clemson, beat them by death by paper cut, and Clemson couldn't do it. And so this week, Dabo and the boys are definitely going to do a lot of goal line segments. They're going to be spending a lot of time in that area and making sure they score, making sure they finish. We're back. Clemson's going to be okay. All the Clemson fans listening, don't panic. I know it looks terrible, awful. Garrett Riley's still a good offensive coordinator. Dabo's still a great coach, even though he won't use the transfer portal. Don't panic. And Wes Goodwin is still great. Everybody needs to calm down. It's going to be okay. But Duke, hats off to you. Y'all beat the crap out of us, and I hope y'all have a great season. I mean, that was a great showing by Riley Leonard, who's tough as nails, and I don't think he's able to go down. I don't think he's able to be tackled. I would like to see him in a different game be tackled, because I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, he was kind of a monster. Where does the Moose stat stand for this week?
Last week was a bye week. It was a preseason game. It didn't count, so we're on to week 2. That's our first game against Charleston Southern, the Buccaneers, who I had circled anyways. That's probably the hardest team of week 2. So people are sleeping on the Charleston Southern Buccaneers. They might have a stadium that's smaller than my high school stadium, but they come to play. They're gritty, hard-nosed football players, and this is what we're looking forward to. That's the problem. Clemson looked past Duke, and they were looking at the Buccaneers. I'm not watching soccer and reading yet.
Everybody needs to follow the Moose stat every week because it's phenomenal. One thing for me when I go back and look at this game, Clemson didn't punt in the second half. They did not punt once. They had 3 possessions in the third quarter that all were inside the Duke 5-yard line. Missed field goal from the 4. My bad. Fumble at the 7. They were inside at the 7. And then fumble at the 1. Their 3 drives were 48 yards, 62 yards, 71 yards. So, like you said, they were clearly moving the ball. They were putting themselves in a position. At this point, they were only down 13-7. They had 3 possessions inside the 10. They put themselves in a position to win this game. The problem is you have to finish the drives. You cannot just go down, get this close, and come away with 0 points, 3 straight possessions.
And the thing, if you want to be a pessimistic Clemson fan, the thing that does worry me is this was similar to the Tennessee game in the Orange Bowl. They would move the ball down the field, get in the red zone, and then either go for it and try to get the touchdown because they needed points, or just would come away with the field goal. And so that seems to be a theme coming into last year. This team had an offseason together, a new offensive coordinator. Guys, don't start saying we need Brennan Streeter and DJ back. It's going to be okay. Give it a couple more weeks.
I did think Will Shipley and Phil Maffa looked really good running the ball. They were both averaging 6 yards a carry. And it really just seemed like you guys were controlling the line of scrimmage when you were on offense. The wide receivers, to me, you don't have a DeAndre Hopkins. You don't have a Sammy Watkins. You don't have a Mike Williams. You don't have a Justin Ross. Like, they all kind of strike me as number 2 guys. They're none of them that are just game breakers.
No, and our guy, our war daddy was, Antonio Williams, supposed to take a step forward this year. I thought he took a step back. He had a couple key drops on third downs. I wasn't impressed with him. On Will Shipley's touchdown, if you go back and watch it as a screenplay, he gave up on his block. Shout out to Bo Collins for blocking downfield, on the perimeter. That's really tough to do, and he did a good job. But Antonio Williams he left a lot to be desired. And if he's got any pride after watching that film on Sunday or Tuesday, sorry, I think he's going to come out and try to make a statement in these next couple of weeks and hopefully really step out against Florida State. You're not going to be able to turn the ball over 7 times against Florida State and it only be a 21-point game. I'll tell you that much.
Will Shipley is clearly the cowbell, because anytime there was something that was needed, they were going to Will Shipley.
Yeah, hand it left, hand it right. That man can do it.
Even dumping it off to him. He had 6 catches. Anytime that they needed something, they were going to Shipley.
If I'm Will Shipley, last thing on this game, I'm sorry, Jake. If I'm Will Shipley,
go for it.
I'm walking to that locker room after the game, and I'm slapping the hell out of everybody else on that offense, because he did everything in his power to win that game.
He tried to put the team on his back, but I really like Will Shipley. I think he's still going to be a very exciting player this year. I think he's going to be a guy that is going to be 1,000-yard rusher. I think he's going to be, upwards of 500-600 yards in receiving. He's going to have 20 total touchdowns. Like, he is a player to watch this year because he's going to be in the NFL very shortly.
Yeah. Oh, and last thing, Jake. Sorry, this is my last thing. Clemson has had over 200 yards passing and 200 yards rushing in 109 games. How many times do you think we've lost when that's happened?
Please tell me it's less than 5.
It is 1 time, and it was on Monday night.
That is an insane stat.
1 time. 78 times in the Dabo Swinney era. So either 78 or 79 times in the Dabo Swinney era, 109 times total. 1 loss, and that was Monday night. It won't happen again. It was a fluke.
It's because it was a preseason game.
Yeah, it was a preseason game. It doesn't matter.
So let's jump into week 2. We have a loaded slate in week 2. And, historically, this is usually when we do get these marquee matchups, because most teams play their cupcake game. And then all of a sudden it starts to matter. We are highlighted and headlined this weekend by Alabama, Texas. 2 of the greatest programs in the history of college football. 2 of the blue bloods. Last year was an exciting matchup. This year, Texas travels to Tuscaloosa. Saturday night, 7 p.m. Will, what is the key in this game for both teams?
The key to Alabama is to control the clock. They've got to be able to run the football. I mean, that is what that team is built to do, especially when you have a guy like Jalen Milroe as your quarterback. They have got to run the football and establish that run, and they've got guys to do it. The freshman running back Justice or maybe he's a sophomore. It's pretty damn good. Jalen Milroe can run. Those receivers aren't scaring anybody. And Texas, they have to do what they did great last year, and what would have won them the game had Quinn Ewers stayed healthy, in my opinion, and that's the vertical passing attack. And Jake, one of the biggest things for this weekend is that Alabama has 2 starting defensive backs out or potentially out. They have their starting free safety, Jalen Key, who's potentially out, and Malachi Moore, their star guy, which the star position is a little safety linebacker hybrid. Those are very important positions, especially when you're playing a team, especially free safety when you're playing a team like Texas, who really likes to attack with the ball downfield. Now they don't have Bijan Robinson open up the box for people, so you have to make sure you account for him. But I think Texas is going to have a very similar offense to what they did last year in the Quinn Ewers era.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you on Texas is key because they have guys on that offense that can stretch the field. Xavier Worthy is the one that everybody knows about because he's been there and he's been playing since he was a true freshman. He's in his 3rd season. Jordan Whittingham is an under-the-radar wide receiver, and they've got A.D. Mitchell, who came over from Georgia, who only had 3 catches on Saturday, but he did score a touchdown. So those 3 guys are going to be key, and Mitchell can straight up fly. That kid's got wheels. Worthy is going to be the number 1 target. He's been the favorite for Ewers, and Whittingham. I keep saying Whittingham. He's Whittington. Is another guy who's just going to help stretch the field. He's going to open it up for these other wide receivers. If they can keep Ewers upright, I'm very interested to see if Ewers can move the ball down the field on this Alabama defense. I don't think Alabama is going to come in here and score 50 points, and I don't think Texas is going to score 50 points. The over-under for this game is set at 53.5. So if you want to break it down, it's Alabama's favored by 7. 53.5 is the over-under. Vegas is really looking at this game as a 30-23 line. Like, that's what Vegas is looking at this game being. I think 30 is a little high for whoever's going to win. I think the game is in the 20s.
I agree. Maybe. I have the game going to overtime, so I think that's what gets it to 30. But Texas better be ready for Dallas Turner. I mean, this is just another one of those war daddy defensive ends that Alabama likes to pump out. That dude can play.
This really strikes me as the Alabama teams when Nick Saban first got there. The last couple of years he's gotten to Tua. He's had Bryce Young. He had Jalen Hurts. Jalen Milroe, I think, is a good quarterback, but he is not the guy who's going to go win a Heisman Trophy this year. Granted, he scored 5 touchdowns against Middle Tennessee State. I don't really care if you can score 5 touchdowns against Middle Tennessee State. If you score 5 touchdowns against Texas, okay, now we have a conversation. Now we'll talk. But I don't think he's going to be the guy to do it. I think this is going to be lower scoring. I think this is going to be a defensive matchup. Nick Saban's first few years, he relied heavily on the rushing attack and his defense. This feels very similar, knowing what he's got on this team, that he is going to use that rushing attack. But Milroe is part of that instead of having a guy like Greg McElroy and A.J. McCarron, guys who are a little more stagnant in the pocket.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, so, I mean, he's similar to Jalen Hurts. I mean, not as talented as Jalen Hurts, but very similar in style. So it's going to be an interesting game. I'm very excited. We're going to find out what Texas and Alabama are made of. There's so many question marks with both of those teams. Is Quinn Ewers the guy? Is he going to give up the starting job? He is the guy. Let's back off on that. If he doesn't get hurt last year, he has a Heisman-esque campaign season. I mean, he's playing last year with a broken collarbone. Let's the kid's tough. The kid's good. Alabama's got the most question marks, which is not normal. Like you said earlier, they don't have Tua Tagovailoa running out there. They don't have Jalen Hurts. They don't have Mac Jones. Let's see what this guy can do. When he's the guy and he's playing in a big environment, it's going to be key that they're in Tuscaloosa. That's huge, but it's going to be a fun matchup.
I am very excited for this matchup on Saturday night. But before this matchup, we have a 3:30 matchup, which might not be what everybody wants to hear us talk about right now, but this is my favorite game of the week, which is Ole Miss traveling to Tulane. Saturday, it's on ESPN2, 3:30 in the afternoon. We get to see the Cotton Bowl winner, Tulane, host Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss announced that Jackson Dart was going to be the starter. He beat Spencer Sanders last week. They went out and they had a good game. Tulane had an important game against South Alabama, and they just knocked him out of the woods. They just demolished him. Michael Pratt goes 14 of 15, 294 yards and 4 touchdowns, which is literally a video game stat line.
Yeah, that was the most shocking thing because I mean, Michael Pratt I thought was a good, tough quarterback, good leader last year, but he was more of a game manager. But he only completed around 50% of his passes last year. I mean, he really struggled, if I remember correctly. So the fact that he went 14 for 15, is good for anybody, but especially for him, that was huge in seeing him do that.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, the rushing attack still finished with 142 yards. They only averaged 3.7 yards, but South Alabama has a very good defense. South Alabama returned almost everybody on the offensive defensive side. Last year, they were a defensive juggernaut. This week, playing Ole Miss, Ole Miss is not a defensive juggernaut. You know, they played Mercer last weekend. I don't take anything that Ole Miss did last weekend for, any sort of knowledge. Beating Mercer 73-7. I learned nothing about you. I just learned that you're not terrible.
Right, but the one thing I can tell you, Quinshad Junkins is healthy and he's ready to play. That was the only thing I was watching in that game. Who's going to start at quarterback, and is Quinshad Junkins going to come out of it healthy? And he did. So look out, Tulane.
Yeah, like Judkins only had 60 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. I really don't look at his 4.6 yards per carry as anything.
No.
Because I'll be honest, I didn't watch this game. I'm just assuming that he had short yardage, and he scored 2 touchdowns. So they must have figured out a way to get in the red zone, and he scored twice. So I don't really care. I'm excited for this.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited too, and I want to see more of Ulysses Bentley the Fourth, because tell me that's not an Ole Miss football name. Ulysses Bentley the Fourth. I think he's a running back. He's got to get some more carries on Saturday.
Is he a running back or is he the president of the university? Because he could be both.
he is both, but he is at first he is a running back.
After his day job, then he goes and is the president of the university.
Yeah.
So this game's intriguing to me because it's going to be a lot of points. The over-under for this game is set at 67 points. Like, both of these teams are going to figure out how to score. They're going to do it rapidly. And honestly, it feels like to me where it could be a fourth quarter game where one possession, a turnover is going to completely change the game.
See, I don't know. I think I have a little bit of a different take on this. I think it's going to be high scoring, but I think Ole Miss is able to pull away, because they have more of the horses in the stable. Tulane's good. They've got guys, but Ole Miss has dudes. And I think, I don't know, Jake, maybe this is SEC biased. I just really don't think Tulane's going to be able to hang around the entire game. Vegas thinks they will. Most of America thinks they will. I don't know. I think Quinshad Junkins is just too much. And Jackson Dart, I mean, with him being able to pull away from 2 other former starters in college football, man, I think that offense might be just a little bit too much for Tulane. But I would have said the same thing about USC, and look what happened. So
I do think the physicality is different in the SEC compared to what USC was last year. Going 14 or 15 against South Alabama is great. They do not have the kind of dudes that Ole Miss does. Now, I do think if you went head-to-head, the defense, South Alabama would be better, but they're not as skilled, as talented, because they're not SEC players. I know that just sounds like I'm being biased for whatever reason, but I'm sorry. The SEC is just more talented. South Alabama plays a great scheme, and Tulane figured out a way to beat them. Also, Tulane's probably been preparing for that game for like 6 weeks at this point, practicing and game playing for that, because they knew they had a big game. There's no Ole Miss if you don't beat South Alabama.
Right. No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think Tulane is going to come out and make a statement. People, I mean, if you don't recognize Tulane as a serious threat to any team in college football, you will after this weekend. First off, shame on you if you don't already, but you will after this weekend.
However, absolutely.
I think the second half is when Ole Miss pulls away.
I think that Tulane is going to come out creative. They're going to do something crazy in the first half because this game is at home. They're playing in New Orleans. They have an SEC team at home. So they're going to be hype. They're going to do something creative. Watch for a halfback pass, a wide receiver screen that's, a jailbreak screen kind of things where they just get creative and figure it out. They're going to find a way to score in a creative measure early. The problem is those trick plays only work one time.
Right. And they run out. And you don't have Tajay Spears walking out there to play running back anymore. And I think that's the biggest hit.
Tajay Spears was absolutely vital to them. He had over 200 yards in the Cotton Bowl last year. Nobody really stood out at the running back position, but you never know. Maybe somebody will stand out this week, but I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. If you like watching offense, this is going to be a game for you.
Yep, and don't get it twisted. I would love nothing more than see Tulane beat Ole Miss. I don't know.
So, loaded week 2. Are there any other games that really stick out to you before we jump into our picks?
I think there's a lot riding on this Miami Texas A&M game. I alluded to in my article today. Last year both those teams are like, okay, they've got some college football playoff hype, and both of them didn't even make a bowl. And I think this year the conversation around the game is completely flipped. Can these teams succeed with their current leadership? Are they? I mean, who's on the hot seat? Jimbo's definitely on the hot seat. Is Mario Cristobal on the hot seat? Are they going to survive the rest of this year with their jobs? So I think it's a very hyped matchup. I think we're going to find out. I think Texas A&M has a lot to prove. They're going to come out and really just put it on them. And I think Miami is in the same boat. So you got two teams with a lot of pride that are really going to come out there and you're going to see their best. They put their best foot forward. It's at 3:30 at the same time as the Ole Miss Tulane game. So Jake, I know you probably won't be watching it. I will be flipping back and forth. I'm very curious to see how this game goes.
See, here's the key. You just need to have 2 TVs in your living room.
Yeah,
That's what I do. That's what I do, my guy. I can put 2 TVs in my living room. I got one on the local channels and one on streaming. So as long as I got one on a local channel, I'm good.
You're the Kevin Gates of watching college football. You got 2 TVs. Mom, I'm going to be at my parents' house this weekend in Sumter, South Carolina. Mom, Dad, if you're hearing this, go buy another TV, put it in the fireplace, put it somewhere in the den so we can watch both of them. You heard it from Jake, not from me. If it were up to me, I'd tell you not to do it, but Jake's saying it has to be done. We need 2 TVs.
Sorry, Mom and Dad. It's just the way of the world. The only other game that really intrigues me this weekend, it's flying under the radar, is I wouldn't say the only other game. My bad. I don't mean the only other game. The other one that I'm really intrigued about is Wisconsin traveling to Washington State on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Because Wisconsin looked pretty good against Buffalo. They ran for like 300 yards with Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen. Washington State completely flew under the radar over the weekend and just dominated in their game. Now they get to host Wisconsin in week 2. The one thing for me is I'm blanking on their quarterback's name. Cameron Ward. Never mind, I'm not blanking on his name. Cameron Ward looked really good in that matchup. And last year, Washington State won this game. Obviously, there was a change in regime then. Wisconsin went out and got Luke Fickell. But Cameron Ward didn't play great against Wisconsin last year.
Well,
he was the former FCS Player of the Year at Immaculate Word, transferred up. Another year at the FBS level, I think he's just getting more comfortable. I'm really interested to see how he does against this Wisconsin team. The Washington State defense only allowed 3 points through the first 3 quarters against Colorado State. So they were up big before Colorado State scored 21 points. And at that point, it's garbage time. So can they slow down the Wisconsin rushing attack? And can Cameron Ward make plays to give his team some offense? Because last year he only scored like 17 points against Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge litmus test, especially for Wisconsin. I mean, they've got a lot of hype surrounding them this year, especially with Luke Fickell coming in, Tanner Mordecai, them changing from the big, heavy run, 75% of the time running the ball, 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense to this spread style that's more conducive to what college football looks like, in the rest of the landscape. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do against another Power 5 school. The St. Buffalo stepping out there, the Wazoos can play, and I am going to be tuned into that game as well. This is a lot of good football this weekend. Jake, have I ever told you I'm excited for this? This is exciting.
This is going to be a great weekend. It's going to be a really great weekend for college football.
I'm surprised you didn't pick your favorite game as my Clemson Tigers versus the stout Charleston Southern Buccaneers game. But not everybody's perfect, Jake. I'll give you a pass.
I am going to the Ohio State Youngstown State game because I have friends that are Youngstown State alum, but granted, I'm an Ohio State fan, so I go to all the games anyways. But they always say that the Pittsburgh Penguins go by Go Pens. So Youngstown State being right there, they go by Go Gwins.
Oh, Lord.
So I told them I might rep a Penguin shirt this weekend because it's not a very important game, and see how many fights I get into.
Are you going to be wearing your I Love Urban Meyer shirt?
That one is in the garbage. I think it got burned by now. It seems as what Urban Meyer somehow still has just affinity for other women, not his wife. Don't know how that man keeps getting caught on cameras with other women, not his wife. Yeah. But sure enough, on his own TV show, there he is off to the side with a woman. If you didn't watch it, just search Urban Meyer on Instagram, Twitter, the internet. You'll find it.
He's improving, Jake. He's improving.
Yeah, he just wasn't as handsy this time. So, got 10 games lined up for this weekend. All of them, I would say, are good games. I wouldn't say all of them are must-watches. There's a couple of games in here I think you can skip. One of them you have to skip because it's on a network you have to pay extra for. But to jump in, we're going to start with Auburn travels to Cal. We have some Pac-12 after dark. Saturday night, 10:30 on ESPN. Auburn is the favorite by 6.5 points. Both teams are 1-0. Where do you stand on this game?
Honestly, I'm surprised that Peyton Thorne is the starter of Auburn. I think his name's Ashford. Looked really good last week. I think he sets the team apart, especially with his running ability. I don't know. I can never get excited about Cal, and to be quite honest, I don't study Cal as much as the next guy. I mean, they beat North Texas 58-21. I mean, they won a game. They scored 58 points. That's hard to do. I just think Auburn's going to come in there, and I'm taking Auburn minus 6.5. I think they're going to go in there and they're going to win, and I think they're going to win by 14 points.
Yeah, this one's kind of a weird game, and I put it on here because it was 2 Power 5 matchups. The spread hasn't moved all week. I'm in a pool, and we track the spreads throughout the week, and the spread hasn't moved. I thought North Texas was going to be a pretty decent team, and then Cal just went and blew them out of the water. But right now, I'm not buying any sort of stock in Cal. If you show me this week that you can beat Auburn, by all means, I'll join you. But at this point, I am not joining the Cal Golden Bears.
If they beat Auburn, I'll be happy that they're coming to the ACC.
God, I forgot that they're joining the ACC.
And similar to Urban Meyer, we have Hugh Freeze. 10:30. It's getting a little late. We got to make sure he keeps his burner phone away from the sideline. He's got to stay locked in on this game. Hugh Freeze, if you're listening, got to stay locked in, buddy. It's the West Coast. It's late. You got this.
Don't worry. The clubs stay open late by the time you get back into Auburn. They'll still be open.
Yeah, you're going to be good.
Game 2, we got Friday night. Illinois travels to Kansas. Kansas is a 3-point favorite.
I'm hammering Kansas minus 3. Kansas took the world by storm last year. They struggled a little bit early last week against the team they're playing. I'm missing it a little bit, but they ended up pulling away and winning pretty big. I think they do the same thing against an Illinois team that struggled heavily at home last week. So, Kansas minus 3, hammering it.
Yeah, Jalen Daniels didn't play last week. Jason Bean got the start. Sounded like Jalen Daniels was struggling with a back injury. Illinois played a really good Toledo team, a Toledo team that I think is going to win the MAC. But Illinois still, in my mind, should have put that game away a little earlier. If Jalen Daniels plays in this game, I think that Kansas wins by double digits. I think they win by 10 or 14 points. If Jalen Daniels does not, I still think they win, but I think this is right around that 3 to 7 point spread. I think Jalen Daniels is worth at least a touchdown, if not more, in this game.
Oh, yeah. I think he plays.
I hope he plays. I love seeing that guy. He's great.
Me too.
Saturday afternoon, we have Sam Hartman and the Fighting Irish traveling down to North Carolina State. They're going to play at noon on ABC. Does the Wolfpack have what it takes, or is Sam Hartman going to keep going?
So, you very correctly said to go take UConn at I think it was plus 14 last week. Great call.
I did.
NC State struggled mightily against the mighty Huskies, and it's not basketball that we're talking about. That ain't gonna fly against Notre Dame. I think Sam Hartman's gonna let it loose, and I think I'm taking again. I'm riding favorites right now. I'm sorry. I'm dodging these plus signs. Notre Dame. I think they win by at least 20 points. I think they're going to dominate them.
This spread confuses me because I was very sold on UConn covering, and Notre Dame has looked very good in their first two games. Granted, they played some random FCS school last week, and I forget who it was. And Navy by no means is some sort of dominant force. This is the first true test for NC State, but Sam Hartman is familiar with NC State. He played in the ACC for like 65 years. Yep. He played NC State multiple times.
Yep.
Notre Dame has played multiple ACC schools every year. This isn't like it's completely unfamiliar territory for anybody as a non-conference game. Like, I'm going to go against the grain here, and everything my gut is telling me, and I'm going to take NC State to cover in this game.
Oh.
I think this is a Vegas nose play. That Vegas has this line at 7.5 for a reason. They know something here that we don't, and I'm going to take NC State plus 7.5. I do not think NC State wins this game. I still think Notre Dame wins it, but I think that maybe this game comes down to the wire a little bit more than it should.
It's a trap. It's a trap, Jake. It's a trap.
I know it's a trap, but I'm just going to try to fall into it and see what happens. Maybe on the other side's a pot of gold for all I know.
There you go. There's only one way to find out.
Fourth game we have here is Appalachian State traveling to North Carolina. Last year, this game combined for about 197 points. This was a back-and-forth matchup. North Carolina and Appalachian State are two different teams a little bit this year, though. This game is favored by 18.5 for North Carolina at 5:15 on the ACC network. What a weird time to play a game.
That's because for some reason Clemson's playing at 2:15. So
just play on the hour. Like, yeah. I don't care if you play at 5. Just why is 5:15 the kickoff time?
You got to get eyeballs on the television, Jake. Got to do it somehow.
So nobody has the ACC network. If they don't have ESPN, how do they have the ACC network?
That's true. That's true. This one, if North Carolina's defense plays anything remotely close to what they played last week, the 18.5 points is very easily attainable. I'm not sure much about Appalachian State. I'm pretty sure Chase Bryce has finally graduated. I think he got his doctorate degree of how many times he was in college or how long he was in college through Clemson, Duke, and then Appalachian State. But Drake May looked amazing. And if Tez Walker plays this weekend, I think I might have to ride these minuses again, Jake. I think North Carolina wins big.
Yeah, I think I'm going to ride with you on this one because Appalachian State struggled last week. They only beat Gardner-Webb, which I actually don't know what state Gardner-Webb is. What state are they in?
Gardner-Webb's in North Carolina.
Okay, more you know. North Carolina, or not North Carolina, Appalachian State entered this game in the fourth quarter, winning by just 7 points. They were actually losing in the third quarter to Gardner-Webb at one point. This spread, 18 points. Maybe Appalachian State was looking ahead to North Carolina a little bit. Maybe North Carolina has a little bit of a letdown game here, but I don't think so. I think 18.5. I think they went by 21. I think I'm going to take 21 points from North Carolina, just enough to cover the spread.
Good man. Good man. Ryan Berger is their quarterback. Pretty cool name.
That is a cool name. Game 4 here. I have a feeling I know which way we're going with this one. You might still be chasing the minuses.
Yeah.
Nebraska travels to face number 22 Colorado. Big noon kickoff, noon Eastern time on Fox. Does Deion Sanders cover 2.5 points this weekend?
I think Deion Sanders, cover corner. He's going to cover the 2.5.
Is that going to be your line every time we do this?
It's going to have to be. It worked last week, so you got. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So hopefully he covers himself better than Urban Meyer does, and covers his minus 2.5. And I think they beat Nebraska pretty good. I'm not sold on Nebraska. I wasn't impressed with them against Minnesota. I think this is I think this is a pretty pretty easy game to take. I'm pretty confident with this going Colorado.
Yeah, I'm with you there on Colorado. Nebraska just always figures out ways to make this a one-score game, though. But it being at 2.5 points, I feel a lot better about it because basically all Colorado needs to do is win by, a field goal. As long as they're not getting a game-winning field goal win by 1 or 2, I feel pretty good about it. I just think that Nebraska's offense did not look good last week. Jeff Sims did not look comfortable. When he needed to make a play, he threw an interception straight into the safety's chest. I am not confident in Nebraska doing anything competent to win a game like this. This is too big of a game, too big of a moment. I just am not liking this line for Colorado. And so one of the books I used, this started at 3.5 and it's somehow working down. So I have no idea what is happening here, but give me Colorado.
Maybe Eric Gilbert stole something out of the Colorado playbook.
Maybe he did. Maybe he did.
I will say, just to get something off my chest, am I allowed to get something off my chest real quick, Jake?
Of course. Take it. Your floor is yours.
Jeff Sims made me look like an idiot. I thought Nebraska was going to be good because of him. I liked him so much as a quarterback. I thought he was great at Georgia Tech, and you are right. He tinkled all down his leg in the fourth quarter against Minnesota, and I was very, very, very disappointed in him. I wasn't mad at him. I was just disappointed. So Jeff Sims, please have a better game. Make me look a little bit better in that take. But Colorado's still going to cover.
Jeff Sims ran the ball very well. I mean, he was their leading rusher. He had 19 carries, more than the rest of the team combined, basically. But he threw 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions. I don't know who else they have at quarterback. Maybe Jeff Sims is the guy. Maybe playing 2 games in a row to start the year is not great for Nebraska.
He beat out the Texas kid. His name's slipping my mind.
Casey Thompson. Yeah, because Casey Thompson ended up transferring, going playing for the Fighting Tom Hermans down at FAU.
That's right.
All right. Game 6 we have here. This is an interesting one to me. You've got Rhett Lashley of SMU traveling to Oklahoma. Oklahoma won by about 97,000 points on Saturday and scored on every possession but their last. They played 87 players on Saturday, and you only have 85 scholarships. Will, you would have played.
I would have been in the game. I would have been dominating.
You would have probably played quarterback at that point.
That's right. They put me in, coach.
Oklahoma is a 16.5-point favorite. This is another weird one at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus because apparently all the networks just hate us this weekend.
Yeah, and Jake, what do you think I'm going to take? You want to guess?
Just go ahead. I'll write down the minus sign.
Big subtraction fan. I'm going with minus. I'm going to Oklahoma minus 16.5. I don't think last week was a fluke. I think Brent Venables has these boys moving in the right direction. He's a culture guy, and he had to get his guys in. I think this is a really good football team, and I don't think they're playoff contention by any means, but I think they're going to be 15-12 in the nation by the end of the year, and they're going to prove it with a cupcake game, SMU, and a lower tier game. SMU is dominant. They're a future ACC team, so let me not hurt them too much. But Oklahoma's going to dominate this game.
I'm going to take SMU to cover here, but I really think it's a backdoor cover. I don't think this is a SMU goes shot for shot with them. I think this is it's 21 points, and they figure out a way to score late in the game and make it under 17 points. So I'm going to take SMU just barely. Just barely. I do like what they have. Preston Stone is a good quarterback. Their stable of running backs is completely underrated, having LJ Johnson and Jalen Knight. And they're 2 guys that transferred from FBS programs. They combined for 31 carries, almost 200 yards rushing. SMU can move the ball with the rushing attack. Jordan Hudson's a true freshman. I think he is going to be a really good wide receiver. I think SMU is going to put up a fight early, kind of get blown out, and then kind of claw their way back in and cover this game.
I like Jalen Knight a lot at running back out of Miami. And all-time name, wide receiver Moochie Dixon. Hopefully he has a great game. Shout out my boy Moochie Dixon.
I love how you always find the random athletes. Hey, they're going against General Booty.
Yeah. He's on the sideline. He's on his booty. He's going to be on the bench.
All right, a game we talked about a little earlier. We got Texas A&M traveling down to Miami. Miami is doing buy one get one free tickets. If you can go to this one, you can also go to the Georgia Tech game.
That is sad.
It's pitiful, pitiful.
Come on, man.
A&M is favored by 4.5 points. This game's at 3:30 on ABC.
Let me go on a tangent again. Miami, you want people to show up to your game? Maybe don't have your freaking stadium on the other side of the state. I mean, you tell me that your students have to drive an hour to get to the stadium? That's stupid. All the money that I'm about to go on a rant. Let me calm down. I'm riding the minuses again. Big minus guy. I think Miami wins. I think Texas A&M covers. I think Miami wins by 2 or 3 points on a late field goal. I think this one goes back to back and forth.
You know Texas A&M is favored by 4.5 points, right?
Correct. I think Miami wins, but I don't think. Oh shoot! I'm going plus 4.5. You're right. Thank you. You've caught me again, Jake. Thank God I'm finally on the plus train. Big plus guy. Always have been. Always will be. I'm going Miami plus 4.5. Plus 4.5.
I'm gonna go the opposite here. I'm gonna take A&M here. I like Connor Wegman. I really do like what Miami is putting together this year. I think that they're going to be a bowl team. I think they're destined for like 8 wins. The problem is I don't think that this is the game where they put it all together. I like their running attack. A&M, though, their defense to me is going to be the difference maker. Their defensive line is just loaded with 5 stars. And to me, that is going to be the difference maker here because they're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage. They're going to be able to pressure Tyler Van Dyke. They're going to make him be able to pressure him into bad decisions. Miami's defense is not going to be able to provide that kind of pressure against Connor Wegman, who's going to be able to find guys like Evan Stewart. And I think A&M is going to win I'm going to take them by 7 points.
Oh.
Enough to cover, but not enough to blow it out.
I can't believe you would take a favorite. I would never take a favorite. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. You would never. You would never. Game we talked about earlier, again, Ole Miss travels to Tulane. This is also Saturday at 3:30 on ESPN2. A bunch of good games in the afternoon.
Big.
Ole Miss is favored by 7.5 points over the Green Wave.
Yeah, and 2 TVs might not be enough. You might need 2 YouTube TVs with the quad screens going on for all the games at 3:30. But as I alluded to earlier, I think this game is tight going into the second half. I think Ole Miss pulls away. Quinshad Judkins is a dark horse Heisman candidate. I think he's an excellent running back, and I think he's going to prove that to the nation tomorrow. Saturday.
So you've Ole Miss to cover.
I have Ole Miss to cover. Hey,
big minus guy.
I'm big minus guy. Always have been. I don't know how people don't pick favorites. It's ridiculous when you don't. I mean, they're favorites for a reason. Am I right?
You know, I've been going against the grain for you 3 of our last 4 picks. I really want to do it. I really want to do it. I want to take Michael Pratt to cover, and I'm going to take Michael Pratt to cover, but they're going to lose.
I was about to say,
they're going to lose.
I love it, Jake. I love it.
I have the faith in you to cover because good teams win and great teams cover. I like what Michael Pratt's doing. The problem is I don't think they have enough skill players to eventually keep up. Ole Miss, they're going to have Quinshad Judkins. They've got Jackson Dart. They've got guys on both sides of the field that can make some plays. Tulane does not have that depth. So my concern also is the offensive line. Last year, Michael Pratt was running all over the field. If you remember watching him against USC, he's having to scramble out of the pocket a bunch. Is he going to be able to find guys downfield when he scrambles, or is he going to find a lot of grass space, or is he going to find a defender? But I think he covers. I only need him to lose by 7. That's all I need. I don't need him to lose by any more than that. 7 will do great.
Right, and you alluded to it. I think Tulane's a good football team, and that's why they stick around for the first half, but they don't have the depth. I don't think so.
This is one I haven't decided on yet. Number 19, Wisconsin travels to Washington State Saturday night, 7:30. Wisconsin is a 6.5 point favorite over the Cougars.
Don't doubt my Badgers, Jake. Don't doubt my Badgers. Wisconsin, I'm going with the minuses. Big favorite guy, big minus guy. They run a spread style offense, but still are able to run the ball for 300 yards. Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi are disgusting running backs. The fact that is unreal how much riches they have in that backfield. The offensive line is phenomenal, and Tanner Mordecai can throw the ball, and if he has to, he can pull that gun out and let it rip against Washington State. I think this game gets ugly, but we'll see.
I think there's a revenge factor in this game for Wisconsin. They lost to Washington State last year. They lost on their home turf to Washington State last year. Now they're traveling out to Pullman. I agree that rushing attack is just going to be too lethal for Washington State. They have not seen a tandem of running backs like that, because when you have guys like that, it's hard for them to ever get tired. Because you can keep their legs fresh. You can continue to rotate them out. Malusi and Braylon Allen really complement each other. They're different backs. They play a different style, but it looks like Luke Fickell already understands how to use both of them. And I think that's going to be huge for this weekend.
Malusi is a former Clemson guy. Maybe don't use him in the goal line. Maybe stick with Braylon Allen in the goal line.
Might be a good pick there. Don't make sure that Braylon Allen scores all your touchdowns. And then the key matchup here. We got Saturday night on ESPN. Number 11, Texas travels to number 3, Alabama. The Crimson Tide and Nick Saban are favored by 7 points. Where do you stand on this one?
This one's tough for me. This one's really tough for me. I think Texas wins the game. I think Alabama covers. I think Texas.
Dude.
I did it again. Texas wins. Texas wins, and they cover. Texas wins. I did it again. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry.
Sports gambling is not illegal in South Carolina. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm new to this. I'm trying to. This is my cover-up story. I don't know what I'm doing right now. Texas is going to win the game. They're going to cover. I'm a big plus guy. I always fade the favorite. That's just what I do. It's my MO.
I am gonna.
Sorry.
That is true. I'm gonna agree with you here. I like Texas. I think they should have won last year. I am not confident in Alabama's offense right now. I think their defense is going to hold Texas for a decent portion of the game. But like I said earlier, I think this is a lower scoring affair. I don't think Texas wins by more than 7 points. If I were to put money and tell you the exact score right now, I would say this is a 24-21 game. And I think Texas does just enough in the passing game. I think they might get a key turnover on Jalen Milroe. He still is a young quarterback. He's only starting, I believe, his third game. He's going to have a key turnover, which I think is going to be the absolute key. And Texas wide receivers. I know that Alabama plays a good defense. Dallas Turner, Kool-Aid McKinstry. You got a freshman out there, Caleb Downs. You've got guys out there. But I think when you've got that many weapons, it's hard to keep them all down. It's hard to shut them all down, and somebody is going to break out eventually.
Yeah, for sure. And tune in next week, or for the special episode of the week where Jake does gambling for dummies, and he'll be teaching me how to speak gamble talk.
We'll have one viewer. It'll be you. Speaking of listeners, we've got a few listener questions this week. You submitted all of them, but I'll read off through them. So from Twitterless Tony, we have, how many losses will it take for Jimbo Fisher to get fired?
I think the magic number is 5. I think 5 is for sure, 4 maybe, but 5 for sure.
Yeah, if he goes 7-5, I can't imagine bringing him back after he just went 5-7 the year before. You're talking over the course of 2 years, you're 500. This man's making like $9 million a year.
Yeah.
How can you justify keeping that coach with him having really only one elite season since he got to Texas A&M? And it was the COVID season when he went 10-1. Other than that, though, it's been subpar. And you're talking, what are we in, year 5 at this point? Year 5 of Jimbo Fisher, year 6? And you're barely making a bowl game. Like, that's just not going to cut it, especially with the SEC money that you've got now, with Texas and Oklahoma coming next year. It's just going to be even more competitive.
Yeah, I think this is actually year 7. I think 2017 is when year 6. Masterclass of math is going to happen next week as well. But yeah, no, Jimbo Fisher. you've got the biggest glaring issue with him is they have the best recruiting class or top 5 recruiting class year in and year out, and you're not winning games and making bowl games every single year. He should be in the college football playoff conversation every single year with the amount of talent he has on there, and they're struggling to make bowl games. So that's why 5 games, I think, see ya. I think 4 games they might even cut him, but 5 games for sure, in my opinion.
4 games, depending on how they look and who they lose to, you might be able to justify it. But 5 games, there's going to be an inexcusable loss in there.
Yep. And shout out to Tony. Don't listen to this while you're in the air traffic control tower. Make sure you're sitting down, having a popsicle and a nice cup of water. We need you out there making sure our airplanes are going the right way.
So from Twitterless Max, we got is Dabo on the hot seat?
Jake, you want to take this one? I don't know if I should take this one.
I'm just going to say no.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say no, and I think that's a dumb question, to be honest. Like, this man has 2 national championships. He won the ACC last year. Even if you want to temper your expectations for the year and say that they're not going to make the college football playoff, is getting fired for getting 10 wins still, is that going to be too much? Like, I still think getting 10 wins is within reach. I think the schedule is a little more difficult than what people realize, though. There's some trap games in there. There's difficult opponents in there. But, I mean, he can go 6-6 this year, and he's not going to be on the hot seat. Let's be real.
And the thing is with Dabo is he has made Clemson fans' expectations so high that at this point, when we lose or when we stumble, people lose their minds. The only place he's on a hot seat on is the message boards. I think everywhere else, people are level-headed enough to know he's not going anywhere. They love him there. He's done such a great job building that culture, building what they have going on there. And it's not over. The dynasty's not dead. I mean, people are overreacting left and right. I think everything's fine. We're winning ACC championships. We're going to New Year's 6 bowls with a team that's not to Clemson standard. So I think he's okay.
Tommy Bowden, if you go back and look, he was 72-45 in his career at Clemson. He never won 10 games, and he was there, let me count, 3, 4, like 10 years basically.
Yeah.
Never won 10 games and didn't get fired until he went 3-3 to start the year, and that's when they hired Dabo. Like, he made a bowl game in every year except one year they declined it because of a self-imposed penalty they made because after a fight with South Carolina. But like, they kept him around. So unless you're saying the standards have changed, and they probably have changed overall, where the expectation is to compete for the ACC championship, like, he was really, I don't want to say he was average, but he was above average, but he wasn't elite. And if you keep him around for 10 years, you're showing what your standards are.
Right.
But the standards have definitely changed because they've won 2 national championships. They've made the college football playoffs. They've made national championships. That the standard should still be to be competitive in the ACC. The goal is to win the ACC championship. But right now, the goal every year does not make or break your season if you don't win the national championship.
Right, and I think that's where people need to temper their expectations. That's not realistic. What Alabama did is not realistic, and what Georgia's doing is not realistic. And
they're called dynasties for a reason.
Right, and so I mean, we're going to be back in the college football playoff in a couple of years, maybe this year. Who knows? In the conversation, excuse me, maybe not in the playoff, but You got to go back to 2014. I mean, Ohio State wins the national championship after losing to an abysmal Virginia Tech team in Week 1. People forget about games in September really quickly. I think that's a kind of a blessing of when this happened. You can play poorly in Week 1, and as long as Dabo used to always tell us, they only remember November. And you show out in those games in November, that's the only loss on your schedule. You're back in that conversation. It's not over. It's not dead. Everything's fine. Nothing's on fire. We're good.
So from Twitterless Audrey, we have, what team looked the strongest out the gate?
I think that's a great question. Jake, do you want to start with that one?
I'm going to go with Florida State. I think Florida State, just because of the signature of their win, the team they played, the second half of how they put it together, I thought they looked really, really good. And it's their biggest opponent of the year. If you go back and you want to look at some of these other teams from last week, like I'm not sure who else. I mean, Oklahoma looked really good, but Oklahoma didn't really play anybody. Colorado looked really good, but to me, the best team last weekend was Florida State.
Yeah, and just to be different, I'll play not devil's advocate, but I'll be different, and I'm going to go with Utah. Utah showed us that they have depth, that they have athletes. They're able to compete with an SEC team without their starting quarterback and their starting tight end. That was very, very impressive to me, what they did to Florida. They put it on them, and they out-physicaled them in the trenches. I mean, they dominated the offensive and defensive lines, and that was very, very impressive to me. So if I have to pick another team that's not Florida State, just to switch it up a little bit, I would have to say the mighty Utes.
Yeah, I liked what Utah brought to the table. So then we have Bryson Johnson. He said he was listening to Shane Beamer's press conference on Tuesday, and he says this is not a breathe week and that Furman is a hell of a team. A, is this coach speak, or do the Gamecocks have something on their hands, or fight on their hands this week? And B, if you're Gamecock Nation, what are you hoping to see on Saturday?
Okay, number one, fun fact for you, Jake, the more you know. Furman, the Furman Paladins, used to be the Furman University Christian Knights. You can only imagine what that abbreviation is and why they probably changed it. So do some addition and put those letters together, and you'll find out what the Furman University Christian Knights spells. That is not fake. That is real. And that is a Christian school. So now let's go to the question one. Is this coach speak? Absolutely, this is coach speak. Furman is a good team for the FCS. They have no business being on the same field as South Carolina. Now, last year they played Clemson pretty well, but Clemson still, demolished them. So they play well in FCS. They are a good football team. They are well coached, but they don't have the talent to compete with y'all. And Shane Beamer knows that, but he's got to convince his guys that they have to prepare like they're playing against Georgia, like they're playing against North Carolina every single week. That's why he's saying these things. The Gamecocks do not have a fight on their hand. And number two, if I'm Gamecock Nation, I want to see the defense pitch a shutout. I want to see Spencer Rattler come off the field looking like he did when he came on the field with a clean jersey, so not sacked at all. And I want to see more than 30 points scored. I want to see at least 40 points scored if I'm a Gamecock fan. Last week was beyond disappointing. You had a revolving door at right tackle, 9 sacks against UNC. I mean, maybe that says more about UNC than it does about South Carolina's offensive line. Maybe their defense has actually improved that much. I don't buy it to that degree. 9 sacks is insane. Now, to South Carolina's defense, they had -2 rushing yards, so UNC knew what they were doing. They're pinning their ears back and pass rushing every single play, which brings me to my next point. If I'm Gamecock Nation, I want to see Dakereon Joyner rush for over 100 yards. I need to see over 150 yards rushing against this Paladin defense. So, Jake, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that's my take on your 2 questions, Mr. Beans.
I don't really have an opinion on Furman. I spent that whole time looking up the Furman University Christian Knights. And sure enough,
there you go.
It was real. It was real. But sure, yeah, it's coach speak.
Yeah. One of their chants used to be "F you till you're purple." I don't know if that's real, but they are purple and white. So
the more you know.
The more you know.
The more you know.
Fun facts with Moose.
We love fun facts with Moose. Moose and the Moose Stat. Well, that's all we have for this week. Make sure to follow our content on the walkonredshirts.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Follow Moose at Walk On Moose on Twitter. Follow him at William Cockrell on Instagram. Follow us on every other social platform. I'm sure we're on there as well. Make sure to listen, subscribe, give us 5 stars, tell us why we're great, tell us why we're terrible, tell Moose to learn what gambling is. It'd be great.
Yeah. People who love us, 5 stars means great. People who hate us, 5 stars means bad. So make sure you put them for both.
Thank you for listening. That's been another episode of the Walk-On Redshirts podcast.